بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I know you have many questions, and I apologize, for not being able to take them all and to answer them properly. There is one question that was raised that I want to talk about for a minute, and then we want to look at some other things. We did mention Cartesian dualism, and if you've not studied about that, I don't expect you to make any sense of it. This is the nightmare of Western intellectual history, especially the sciences, and Westerners are very aware of that, and they know they have to escape from it, but they don't know how. So in Cartesian dualism, you have this radical divide between things out there and the mind that perceives them. And just to clarify that, what do we have as an alternative to that? Well, in our traditional worldview, and this is the traditional worldview probably of everyone that ever was on earth, inherited, I would believe, from the prophets, is that you are the little world, and that is the big world. And even the modern concept of mind, M-I-N-D, is extremely problematic. But we would have had a huge issue with that, because your mind is the whole of you. Your heart, your spirit, even your fingernails. This is a very holistic view of the world. And in order to understand it, we need to be tutored through it and see what it means. But microcosm, macrocosm, you see, that's the traditional Islamic worldview. Al-alam al-kabir wal-alam al-saghir. And it's not arbitrary. But one of the things it means is that you are a blueprint of that world, and it is a blueprint of you. Again, where do we go with that? So what? Well, one of the things that means is that you know that world. You can know that world. And this is one of the reasons why when you read traditional Islamic literature, in certain fields, like the names of God, Asma'ullah al-Husna, and things like that, you will find this discussion which you may say, what in the world are they talking about? About such things as, what? Is the name the same as the thing named? Al-ism hal huwa al-musamma? And to the modern secular mind, that makes no sense. It's absurd. Okay, but that's because we live in a secular Cartesian dualist world. That's an extremely important proposition, because not only can you know the thing you know and name the thing so exactly that you get its essence, but we say in our tradition, and not everybody in our tradition says this, that that the knower and the known become one. So you are not just the brother of the tree, you can actually know the tree. And, we don't want to get into anything spooky, but it's like, you can truly relate to that tree. And, if you get into modern epistemologies, science, the science of cognition, and other things like this, you know how rich this is, because it means that we can know the world, and therefore we relate to the world in a way that is real and objective. And this has incredible consequences for science, for psychology, for spirituality, and other things. We don't have a whole lot of time, Beauty is the splendor of truth. Beauty, therefore, is the communicator of truth. Beauty is the messenger of truth. Beauty is what makes the truth meaningful in our hearts. And we are supposed to be people of beauty, people of ihsan, people of jamal. But this was not just a spin-off of our civilization. It was almost like the mission of our civilization. And this is the way that it made itself so attractive to the whole world around it. So we have here several elements, but they're basically three: truth, virtue, and beauty. And let's talk about these a little bit. Truth is coherent. Truth is coherent. Okay, it brings everything together. This is one of its hallmarks. And one truth underlies all things. Of course, the truth of truth, haqqul haqq, is God himself. Who is the creator of all that exists, and he creates it in the way that is most perfect. But nevertheless, there is one truth that underlies everything. And microcosm, macrocosm, which is for us a scientific principle, this is just the first complementarity that is manifested in that. The universe is a unified whole. In fact, the word means that, universe. And the whole world is one. Just as a city ought to be one. And just as an animal is one. And just as a human being is one. Okay, so the fundamental purpose of Islam in intellectual history, especially in science, was to root all knowledge in a way that realized and manifested the unicity of truth and the unicity of nature, that it all fits together. And the supernatural, meaning by that the unseen, it has a natural aspect, because the natural world is a reflection of it. So also when you know this world out here that you can see, and you know how to understand it properly, and you have that gift to do that, then it also gives you this access to the perception of higher realities. Truth, like reality, is not invented. It is discovered. And that's why we refer to the discovery of truth by many beautiful words, but often we say unveiling. And you are a treasury of truth, because God created you with an amazing fitrah, an amazing natural self, filled with knowledge and wisdom. Okay? But you have to get access to that. And you can only do that with self-purification. Okay? But nevertheless, truth is what you discover. Truth is what is unveiled. And of course, you don't do that on your own. You have guides. It's all based in revelation. It's based in following the prophetic law. It's not arbitrary. We have standards to judge by so that we don't make colossal mistakes. Okay, so reality, too, is discovered and not invented. Today, people would say that reality is just whatever you want it to be. And we have idiots, like Stephen Hawking, criminals like Stephen Hawking, who will say that, you can have any world you want. You want a geocentric world? You can have it. You want a heliocentric world? You can have it. It's just a question of the mathematics and how elegant you want it to be or not. I mean, this is insanity. This is insanity. We could talk about that to a great extent. But, reality too is discovered. It is not invented. And the purpose of science and thought in Islam was really the rooting of knowledge. This is so important. Okay, virtue. Let's say a few words about virtue. Beauty and virtue, or goodness, are two faces of the same reality. One of them is essentially outward, beauty. The other of them is essentially inward, virtue. Goodness is internal beauty. Virtue is internal beauty. Beauty is external goodness. Very, very nice. This is all part of that paradigm, and this is something real. Okay? Ihsan, which is this huge goal that we all should have, to be muhsinun, people of beauty, people who live in beauty, people who produce beauty, people who are beautiful in the way they speak, the way they walk, the way they live with their family and their neighbors. It is virtue internalized. And virtue is at the root of ihsan. Okay. They say that the love of God is the essence of virtue. Virtue is also very closely related to justice. So they also would say that adl is part of that as well. Because justice is balance. And balance is harmony. Virtue comes from the just mean between two extremes. All right? Virtue is essential to intelligence. We said this, but let's repeat it because it's very important. In the modern secular world, we don't draw any connections at all necessarily between intelligence and virtue. And yet, in the traditional worldviews, our own and those of others, these two can't be separated. And of course, at institutions like Harvard and Yale, or Columbia, or these other old institutions, University of Chicago, where I went to school, it's be a little bit different because it's, from the 1890s. These schools, the old schools, they were all schools of virtue and theology. And what was that text that was on the place where we prayed Salat al-Jumu'ah in Columbia? The text that was up there, I don't remember, but it was about something like that. That you've got to have virtue in order to have truth. No, anyway, we'll come back to that because, okay, so we are made such that our intelligence has no effective value unless combined with virtuous character. And it's interesting that often in intellectual history, you get these people, which some people like to call genius. A genius is a very problematic matter. Okay, erected for students. Yeah, so listen, erected for the students. This building was erected for the students. So religion and learning may go hand in hand, and character grow with knowledge. That's the same thing. And that was Columbia University, how many years ago? These were standard truths. To think that you can teach students anything without teaching them how to be good human beings, virtuous human beings, was just absurd. And it is absurd. And, God bless Shaykh Hamza and this amazing accomplishment called Zaytuna. And may they have success beyond their dreams. But of course, Zaytuna, one of the main things it's doing is trying to make a university a university. And what was a university? First of all, a university brings everything together. It unifies everything. It is based on the belief in the universality of all things known. And the university was always a place of theology foremost. And to this day, it has to be that way. And our theology is spectacular. Believe me, Shaykh Hamza and I, gave a presentation back in 2003, The Attributes of God. Some of you have the CD. But, we talked about Islamic theology. We did it in a very brief way, not in an exhaustive way. But that's one of the things Shaykh Hamza was emphasizing, is that our theology is absolutely amazing. Believe me, it is. That aqidah, when it's taught with understanding, it gives us a key to everything. But it means nothing without virtuous character. But when we talk about this word genius, and we could talk about that, but I think there are better things to talk about. The West in the 19th century in particular has a cult of genius. And these geniuses with their hair all over the place and absent-minded and everything, these become like the prophets of modernity. And interestingly, of course, these people are not all the same. They're very different. But you'll find that many of them were not very nice people. In fact, they're often very unbalanced people. But they do certain things, that lead to inventions, and then the people laud them, and they follow them. But often these so-called geniuses, they have basically one breakthrough. And they have this incredible insight that they will elaborate, maybe they have it when they're 15 or 16, and they elaborate it for years. Einstein's an example of that. And he gets special relativity, general relativity, and then basically there's nothing after that. There's nothing after that. And often they become actually very mediocre. And why is that? Well, everyone has their own answers, but some of our scholars would say that's because they did not complement their intelligence with virtue. And therefore the gift fades. Had they done that thing, which is to complement their gift with virtue, then they would have produced all their lives. So these things have to go together. Let's say a few things about beauty. Beauty is content. Okay, it's not just some kind of outward balance. The content of beauty is the richness of possibilities in God's cosmic generosity. The richness that underlies beauty is the richness of the possibilities of God's cosmic generosity in the way that he creates and in the fact that all of these things link together. Beauty has the mark of harmony. Just like that's also part of your soul when you're virtuous, that you are harmonious. You are balanced. It's essential to good health. And harmony is the reflection of the principial unity that underlies the manifest world. This correspondence is also the basis of symbolism. And perhaps we don't say much about that, but for us in our tradition, symbols are real. They are not arbitrary. And, we could go into some of the great symbolic. Of course, the Quran is symbolic. It's full of symbols. Hadith is symbolic. It's full of symbols. But we never believe symbols to be metaphors. We believe symbols to have a relation to the things they symbolize, which is stronger than the thing itself. And symbols are rooted up there, in the vertical plane. Of course, in modern psychology, Freud will say, Symbols are just illusions that are coming from, the subconscious of the lower self. Well, and even the West doesn't believe that today. Jung, who succeeds Freud and who opposed Freud, Jung has a different view, but still it's basically, this has got to be psychic. Why? Because there's nothing else that exists. There's just things out there in the mind that perceives them. Again, you see the dualism? And that's why Jung, who can't see, why do people have the same symbols? Why do they have the same symbols? What does a square mean? Well, a square has a personality, by the way. And a square has a numerical value, by the way. But the square is the earth. And the square can be many other things. But the square is the earth. For us, it's the earth. And for the Chinese, it's the earth. When you write the earth in Chinese, it's square. And when you write China, it's square with a mark through the middle because it's Middle Earth. Okay? And these are not arbitrary things. And what is a circle? Well, circles are many things. And circles have personalities. They have numerical values. They are extremely meaningful. They have centers. Square also has a center. Okay? But the circle is the heavens. And again, that's not just us. That's all kinds of traditions. And they didn't learn it from each other. It's like they just got it because they had something here and something here. And that's why one of the great objectives in Islamic architecture is to put the circle on the square. Of course, in doing that, you get a dome. And one of the great things about a dome is that you don't have to have lots of pillars. If you've been to these old Muslim mosques like Ibn Tulun in Cairo, or you go to the great mosque in Cordoba, pillars, 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 and it's beautiful, and I have no problem with that. But then again, Muslims would say, if only we could kind of get some open space. But you can't do that if you can't put a circle on a square. And architecturally, that is extremely difficult to do, just as it is geometrically. Okay, but to put the circle on the square is symbolically to unite heaven and earth. And therefore, when we do it in our architecture, we actually do it with that in mind. And again, how many people love the dome, but they don't necessarily perceive anything like what we just said. Yet that is intrinsic to it. So all things are linked together. And that's what lies at the reality of number and symbol. And letters. All things correspond to each other. In this correspondence, they work together to produce universal and total harmony. And this universal and total harmony reflects the unity of God, the oneness of God. And this correspondence that we just talked about, that is the basis in reality of symbolism. Again, the modern human being as a rule, is totally illiterate when it comes to symbolism. They can't get it. You'd have to walk them through it like a baby. And this is again because of what our destruction of metaphysics has done to us. Okay, as we said before, beauty has ontological roots. It is there in reality. And I gave the illustration of how really beautiful things attract people. They attract all people, whether they're Muslims or not. Just like Al-Hamra, it attracts the Japanese, the Chinese, atheists, Marxists, everybody. But beauty has ontological roots. We talked about that a lot. But then there are other things that indicate it, like a snowflake. Snowflakes are beautiful. Flowers suggest a whole world. And beauty liberates. Beauty frees you. Ugliness imprisons. As we said, beauty is outward virtue. Beauty is not the same as truth. Of course, we can say that beauty is truth. And one of our sisters did say that. But technically, beauty and truth are not the same. They're different. But they go together. I mean, if you do not have beauty, you do not have truth. So they are measures of each other. Beauty is not the same as truth, but it enables you to grasp truth through a series of perceptions that lead to each other, as opposed to discursive thought, which also has its rule. And again, traditional Muslims were extremely sophisticated at this. Our architects were masters, and one of the things I saw this summer that was really astounding, we talked about the golden ratio. You know what the golden ratio is? The golden portion? It's a big deal. That's your face, by the way. It's all the golden ratio. And the golden ratio is that proportion which human beings have generally believed to be maximum beauty. And it can be, we can give you the mathematical value of it, which is an irrational number, doesn't end. The Parthenon is an incredible manifestation of the golden portion. Generally speaking, in the golden portion, you have a thing, and when you divide it, then that third that is divided, I'm probably going to get this wrong, its relation to the other portion is going to be the same as that portion's relation to the whole. Okay? I don't know if that made sense to anybody. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I know what I'm talking about, so I know it should have made sense. But it's very amazing. And you see the golden portion in throughout nature. Leaves. And it has numerical values. Like 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. And you'll find the petals of flowers are like that. There'll be 3, 5, 8. The relationship of your nose to your face and your eyes to that and this to that. It's all golden ratio. It's all golden ratio. But we were talking about that. And Shaykh Jihad Brown gave some incredible, he just rolled off all these examples of the golden ratio in your face, in your body, your arms. But then, one of the brothers who's a student of art and architecture, he showed me in certain Ottoman mosques how some of the people making the designs and the calligraphy were doing it with the golden ratio in mind, and then they're putting all sorts of other things in there about letters, the names of God, and he would just say that some of these are just masterpieces. And again, who's doing the building of the mosque? The guilds, the asnaf. Okay, so that particular calligraphy. Okay, so that particular calligraphy, that he was seeing that was brilliant. He said, you can see how the other guilds, they see how great what they did was, and they try to beat it. They try to equal it, but they usually can't do it. So I was told that it's time to go home. He didn't say that, but it is actually time for us to go home. It's been an honor to be with you. I thank you for your patience. And, it's a brief visit. Hopefully Allah will enable us to get together more. And I will be giving a presentation on this topic, inshallah, at RAS in Canada, in that teaching retreat. And I'll try to do my homework better. and to get it down a little bit tighter and to move a little bit faster. But so we will have Beauty is the Splendor of Truth in Canada, and maybe we get a little bit further. Okay, we didn't get very far today. But what's your question?
I just want to know, what was the name of the group that you said that was Spain and you?
Sorry?
Didn't you say there was a group, like a travel group that goes to the mosque?
I can tell you.
Oh, you can tell me that?
Okay, Hisham will tell you about that. But we're not a travel group. You got to pay your own ticket. Okay? Yeah, Bismillah. Tafadal. Oh, it is time. I forgot. Oh, my goodness.
So we
اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى وجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. آمين آمين آمين. May you all be well.